Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of universities and should they be audited by, in the case of the United States, by DOGE, Elon Musk and the team. Should they be audited for waste and corrupt, spending, money laundering, channeling vast sums of money into the pockets of patronage appointments and activist groups and so on and so forth. Now, I would argue yes, and I think they're seething hotbeds of financial mismanagement and again, laundering and cronyism and so on. So yes, they should be audited on the basis, well, twofold. One is that they're recipients of large amounts of taxpayer government money and handouts and grants and so on, but also they receive special exemption or tax exempt status and also exemptions in a number of different regards. And because of that, A, government protection, and B, collecting money, that they should be audited. Now, it shouldn't be an audit that's politicized. The audit is to prevent and to unwind the politicization that's taken place at the universities, not to simply replace one political ideology for another. That's hardly going to be useful to anybody. But I just want to have a look at this generally. Now, whenever I meet, be they lecturers or administrators or people involved in the university sort of situation at all, then I'm talking to low IQ, radical activists. I can't think of a single. I mean, I'm looking at one now. I met the professor of jurisprudence, professor of law, and this guy's got the chair. That is, he's the most senior lecturer for law at one of Australia's leading universities. We don't call them Ivy League in Australia. We call them sandstone universities because they're the ones that are steeped in hallowed tradition and so on, having been the earlier established universities in Australia. Anyway, he's the head of the jurisprudence at this university, and the guy is a radical social justice placard waving activist. He's fanatical about the idea that black and brown women are an oppressed class, and that the law should be used to create some sort of social justice paradise. And he's richly rewarded for this. He's given assignments by leftist governments to review legal procedures in a court or something like that, and he invariably comes back with the oppression, and he's paid big bucks for this. He's got a consulting firm that he's associated with, so his annual income would be pushing $1 million a year, and he lives in an area where it's 99% white, although he screams about black oppression and this sort of thing. Why isn't he living in an all-black neighborhood? Why does he live in an all-white neighborhood with in a gated community with security guards? There you go. So and he's got a job for life, and his pension will be massive, so he'll live luxuriously at the taxpayer's expense, by the way. He'll live luxuriously, and all he does is spout absolute nonsense about evil straight white males oppressing everyone else and so on, something that has infected his entire legal department in this university. So and now the people he appoints, if you look at all the people that work as clerks and bureaucrats and flunkies and fetch and carry stooges and all this sort of thing, they're heavily represent the gay community. LGBT trans people are very well represented. There's hardly any white people there, and the white people that are there are gay or lesbian. So clearly people are not being appointed on any form of merit, diversity, equity, inclusion, and so on. Now, even though you may stop the policies of DEI and say, well, we're going to hire a merit, and you drop all the DEI nonsense off your websites and so on, you disband the DEI department, but you can still have in that department at least, you can still have an unspoken, unwritten policy of only hiring black lesbians, and what are you going to do about it? So only an audit will come out with that sort of thing that okay, the 60% of the population is white, and the majority of the people who have degrees are white. So why is 99% of your department non-white? You need to explain that. And all these endowments and grants and handouts and various freebies that you get given, you're not going to get those anymore because you're misusing them, and that's not acceptable. You need to hire on merit. This is not some social justice Marxist fucking cabal, that you're not a playground for low IQ Marxist fantasists to play in the sandpit and play house with. This is a serious business. You're educating the future lawyers and judges of the country. You will take that seriously, and you will apply merit in that, that sort of thing. So audits would flush out not only misuse of funds, and there are things that they have connections. This legal department or this department of the university, they've got connections to all sorts of NGOs and all sorts of activist groups that when they've got a job going, it could be a clerk's job, or maybe they just invent jobs so they can hire these so-called marginalized groups. When they've got a job going, they go to these. They don't advertise it in the the newspapers or online job boards or something. They go to these activist groups. Okay, look, we need a black lesbian for a job. Okay, we'll find someone for you. We want them to be activists. We want them to hate white people with a passion. No, got it. No, we'll have someone for you by tomorrow. And then they just hire that person. So in fact, the sovereignty of the university has been reduced to zero. Now, who works there is decided by these activist NGO groups that are also funded by USA or George Soros or something. So that's sort of the network of corruption. Or an example of one of the networks of corruption. Now, also where grants and so on go, so NGOs can come to the lesbian, angry lesbian social justice activist, law academic, say, look, we need a paper that says that black women are oppressed in the legal fraternity and that they're all being murdered at the rate of 10,000 million per nanosecond. Can you produce some research and study for us? Got it done. We'll pay you $1 million or $200,000. So how the grants are being applied and where they come from and what they're for, and they're deliberately seeking what's called advocacy research. That is, we have a predetermined outcome. We want you to justify why all straight white male Christians are all Hitler. Can you do it? Got it, done. No, we're sorted. So they can produce that, and they're paid to produce this hateful propaganda, and paid richly, and they're receiving those grants on the condition that they must hire X amount of black lesbians as researchers and so on. So the levels of corruption, internal and external, are substantial. People are hired as professors and lecturers and so on, who have got an IQ of minus 5 million. They're just there to spread radical activism and so on in these universities and to take in these low IQ students. Now we need to, I think the audit also needs to include, are universities willfully bringing in and granting places to low IQ activists, simply who will get a government guaranteed loan, and so they're taking these people in just to gin up their cash flow, not because these students have got a snowball's chance of passing in any meritorious exam. They're too stupid to make it through junior high school, let alone into university, but they do represent a guaranteed cash flow for the universities, given that the government guarantees the loan, or they're forced, the students forced to pay it under government coercion, even though the degree has no value or use to them, and will put them in a state of penury for the rest of their lives and effectively make them, in a financial sense at least, non-citizens for the rest of their lives. Should this be audited as well? I believe it should be. Now, on top of this, the universities offer and give and provide, gleefully and aggressively provide, vast amounts of office space and car parking space, the whole thing, to various activist groups. In every university, certainly that I've looked at, they have NGO groups are given offices within the university and access to all the university, the student union names and email addresses and phone numbers, this sort of stuff. And they're given so they can whistle up a placard waving mob sort of on demand, so that universities are fully integrated within the street placard waving activist NGO community there, and giving free office space and all sorts of perks and benefits and access to these outside players, the NGOs, in order to create this sort of miasma of social justice activism that's omnipresent around all Western societies and purposefully directed at leftist Marxist social justice activist goals and objectives. Now, this needs, I think, to be audited as well. Why are these people being given free office space in the university? Now, on top of that, and this is one extra dimension, the body politic, certainly in Australia and elsewhere around the Western world that I've seen, sees the universities as a dumping ground and a reward sort of area for their political friends and the friends of their friends. So, if a black lesbian activist is looking for a job and sort of I know, we'll give you a job in the university. So there's a lot of people being given patronage jobs in the university. And, recently a friend of ours was recently did like a short-term temping gig, if you like, in the university, and was staggered about how many people are there that actually have no job, that do nothing, and work from home doing nothing, and when they turn up they do nothing. And there's a vast phalanx of people who are just there as patronage appointments. They have no job, they have nothing to do, they have no purpose, but yet they're employed and they're drawing a salary, and so it's used as just a cash cow to fund activists and political friends and relatives of friends and mistresses of politicians. Now, in addition to that, the salaries of the senior level of the university executive have gone up. Just out of all sight, they've gone up sort of 1,000% in the last 20 years, more than that. And so, a dean of a university or a vice dean can be easily making well over $1 million. And these people tend to be, with rare exception, political hack-goon stooges, globalist flunkies that are given these jobs and paid handsomely to, again, do nothing other than sit there and look prestigious and important. I think that needs to be audited. And the people that are meant to be there are meant to be there for educational excellence. I'll conclude with one point here. Some areas of the university still are capable of leading edge technical research, whether it's creating products or technology that for the next rocket to outer space or whatever it might be. And this is where I've had more direct involvement with these universities. Tend to be maybe not direct in the university, but sort of Quango type offshoots of the university. And as soon as any of these, there's a bit of technology that's developed, always by straight white guys, by the way. As soon as this bit of technology is developed, looks like it's promising, then they'll run it, like create a little separate entity for it. And then they'll absolutely load it up to the gills and the rafters with as many black lesbians as they can lay their hands on. And they'll create a crushing payroll and expense overhead to this sort of thing, which means it's just driven into the ground. They treat it as any parasite they can find, they'll shove into this entity. And of course, the technology goes nowhere. It never even gets off the ground, even though it may have a decent possibility of becoming very viable commercially and technically, but instead they'll destroy it with their radical fanatical parasitism, because they view everything as a patronage, as an entitlement, as a piece of activism, of social justice engineering, which destroys anything and everything they touch. So an audit would flush out a lot of this, but it's not just a case of getting rid of activists, although that's part of it. It's a case of making these people accountable for their expenditures. You're there to educate students in excellence, academic excellence, not to turn them into low IQ, useless social justice warriors, screaming oppression from every rooftop. So this is all something that could come out of it. But university, one way or another, these universities have to be dealt with, and an audit from DOGE could be one way of doing it, because the exposure of malfeasance and malpractices, I think, will be huge, and that certainly needs to be brought to light. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.